Hello again, World History 2 students. Mr. Deegan here with another VidNotes video. We're on to Unit 7's Lesson 4. We're continuing to look at World War I, this time the peace after World War I, and a group that was supposed to keep the peace called the League of Nations. We're also going to be talking about how the Middle East breaks up during this time. The Ottoman Empire becomes the countries of Iraq and Syria and Jordan and Lebanon. We'll talk about who owns these areas this lesson. We're also going to talk about a somber issue, a sad issue, the Armenian Genocide in Eastern Europe. Why is this boy emaciated, hungry, poverty-stricken? We're going to talk about the Turks and the Armenians today as well. Our two guiding questions. How was the modern Middle East created out of World War I's recovery plan? And question two, what was the Armenian Genocide? Let's review. The Treaty of Versailles of 1919 was World War I's peace treaty. Woodrow Wilson was the American representative at the table of this treaty. And the terms of the Treaty of Versailles said land, military, blame, and money would all be related to Germany. And Germany seemed to get an unequal amount of blame. And this political cartoon reflects that sentiment, and the anger that Germany feels after World War I and the Treaty of Versailles gives way to the Nazi Party to rise to power before the start of World War II. The Treaty of Versailles also created the League of Nations, which was U.S. President Woodrow Wilson's idea. And here he is, and here is his 1919 idea, this peace organization. So Woodrow Wilson had 14 points, 14 items that would actually win him the Nobel Peace Prize in 1919. He said, no secret treaties, freedom of the seas for all, equality of trade, reduction in militaries. Let's prevent another world war, people. Readjustment of imperial claims, evacuation and return of all Russian territory. Belgium must be restored to order. All French territory must be returned. The readjustment of Italy's borders. Austria-Hungary must regain autonomy, meaning independence. The Balkans must be evacuated. The sovereignty for Turkey is important, as well as the rest of the Ottoman Empire. An independent Polish state must be established. And the most important of the 14th points, the League of Nations. What was the League of Nations? Here's its logo. It was an international cooperative organization, and it was established to prevent future wars. Here is the map of the League of Nations countries. You see in dark green are the permanent members that were with the League of Nations from the beginning. The lighter green are some of the late members. And in white, look at who is absent from the League of Nations. It's the United States. The League of Nations failed. Why? It did not have the power to enforce decisions. It didn't have a military. It had weak diplomatic power. And the U.S. Senate voted against joining, opposing its own president's idea. Yes, the U.S. Senate voted down the Treaty of Versailles and the League of Nations on March 19, 1920. Why? It sounds reasonable. Well, a majority of U.S. politicians thought that the U.S. was giving up the power to control its own foreign policy. This is William Borah. He is a senator from Idaho. He opposed President Wilson's plans, and this is what he said. If we agree to this, we will have forfeited and surrendered once and for all the great policy of no entangling alliances upon which the strength of this republic has been founded for 150 years. Who said this phrase? Mr. George Washington did. He did not want the US to get involved in any unnecessary alliances. Bora shares that sentiment, and he thinks Wilson is ignoring George Washington. The League of Nations does create the mandate system in the Middle East. What is mandate? It's an official authority to act. So under the mandate system here, France and Britain gain control of land in the Middle East, at least temporarily. How was the Middle East divided under the League of Nations mandate systems? Well, Britain gets Iraq, Transjordan, which later becomes just Jordan, and Palestine. Here you see Palestine going to Britain, Transjordan going to Britain, and Iraq going to Britain. And France gets Syria, and to the west, Lebanon. What's the impact of this mandate system? Well, the division of the Ottoman Empire through the mandate system planted the seeds for future conflicts in the Middle East. So the Ottoman Empire is broken up. It eventually becomes Turkey, but it also becomes unstable. Shifting gears, we're going to be talking about a hard topic. It is the Armenian Genocide. These are human bones, human remains that were dug up. These are Armenians. We're going to be talking about why this all happened. First of all, let's define the word genocide. It is the systematic and purposeful destruction of a racial, political, religious, or cultural group. It is the planned destruction of a group. Here is a picture that shows all of the genocides in the 20th and 19th century. Here's Armenia. The Holocaust is probably the most cited genocide. Cambodia in Asia, Darfur and Rwanda in Africa. Where is the country of Armenia anyway? Here's Europe. To its south is Africa. Here's Russia in Asia. And here is Armenia, the slice of land east of Turkey. And during World War I, when this area is still the Ottoman Empire, here is Armenia. It's south of Russia, north of Turkey and Iran, and the majority of its 3 million people practice Christianity. In fact, Mount Ararat in Armenia is the peak on which Noah's Ark is said to have landed during the biblical flood. So it has a lot of religious significance for Christians. What was the Armenian Genocide? When was it? From April 1915 to 1917? Here's some background. Armenia became an independent kingdom in 1000 BC, before the birth of Christ, and in the 1400s, the Ottoman Empire absorbed Armenia into its empire. And here you see in green the stretch of the Ottoman Empire, and within you see the Armenian homeland within the Ottoman Empire. Onward we go. In 1908, the new government takes power in the Ottoman Empire, led by the Young Turks. The Young Turks was an extreme nationalist group that wanted to Turkify the empire and declared Islamic jihad against all Christians. They were extremists. On April 24th, 1915, the Turkish government arrested and executed hundreds of Armenian intellectuals. And these are just some of the Armenian philosophers and professors and thinkers who were executed. If you execute the smartest of the Armenian race, then they will not be able to progress. That was the thought, the sick thought of these Turkish government officials. After April 1915, Turkish police force Armenians out of their homes and send them on death marches through the Mesopotamian desert without food or water. And here is a photograph of one such death march. Here are the Armenian people. And people who stopped to rest were shot by these Turkish police. The Young Turks hired killing squads, who were really imprisoned murderers or ex-convicts, to drown Armenians in rivers, throw them off cliffs, crucify them, or burn them alive. In total, about 1.5 million Armenians died, and here are their bones, which have been dug up from mass graves. Adolf Hitler used the Armenian Genocide as a reason for starting the Holocaust, believe it or not. Here's what he said right before he invades Poland. I have issued the command, and I'll have anybody who utters but one word of criticism executed by a firing squad, that our war aim does not consist in reaching certain lines, but in the physical destruction of the enemy. Accordingly, I have placed my death head formations in readiness, with orders to send to death mercilessly and without compassion men, women, and children of Polish derivation and language. Only thus shall we gain the living space we need. Who, after all, speaks today of the annihilation of the Armenians? So Hitler says, no one punished the Turks for annihilating the Armenians, so I am going to do a similar thing to Jews and minorities in Germany. Sick. How is the Armenian Genocide seen today? Today, the government of Turkey refuses to acknowledge that it committed a genocide. Governments around the world, unfortunately, including the US, have not called it a genocide either. Why? Because Turkey is a strategic ally in the war against terrorism. You don't want to lose this important ally. Well, one world figure, Pope Francis, the head of the Catholic Church, he called it the first genocide of the 20th century. And there are many groups who support the Armenians and who want to shed light on this tragedy. And this is actually a road sign in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Here's Pope Francis, and the road sign says, "Thank you, Pope Francis, for recognizing the Armenian genocide. Hashtag never forget 1915, the start of this genocide." We're almost done, ladies and gentlemen. We have but our summary questions remaining. Please get all 30 points and do the summary questions now. Next lesson, we're going to go to Russia. We're going to talk about this man, Vladimir Lenin, and how he changes Russia from a monarchy into a communist country known as the Soviet Union. Until that lesson, this is Mr. Deegan, signing off.